welcome to Miss Mac's Bookbag. I'm Miss Mac. In this show, our goal is to expand your reading experiences. On today's episode, we have a very special book we will be reading together. The story we have today is called Maggie Adopts a Kitten. It Really Happened. Written by Marci Kladnik and illustrated by Stephanie Piro. And it is about the story of Maggie, the Scottish Terrier, and how she adopted a kitten, Barney. Our reader today is Marlina Jones from Eastbury Elementary School. So sit back and enjoy Maggie Adopts a Kitten.
Hi, I'm Marlina. Today we are reading Maggie Adopts a Kitten. It Really Happened by Marci Kladnik, illustrated by Stephanie Piro. Maggie was a Scottish Terrier. From the very beginning, she was different. It wasn't because her right ear didn't stand up the way a Scottie's ears are supposed to. It wasn't because she liked raw carrots while her litter mates spit them out. It was because she liked cats. Her mother and father disliked cats, and so did all her brothers and sisters. Any cat that dared come into the backyard was promptly chased over the fence and barked at quite loudly. Only new cats in the neighborhood ever made the mistake of going into that yard. No cat ever went back. Maggie never joined in the chase, but would sit quietly and watch from a safe distance. One day, when Maggie was old enough to leave her mother and father, she went to live with a nice lady named Marci. It was a long way from home, and the puppy was scared. She was so frightened during the car ride that she peed in her crate and arrived somewhat soggy. Marci didn't care. She held her new puppy close, scratched her head, and let Maggie lick her face. Maggie felt much better after that. Maggie's old backyard had been mostly dirt. So when Marci set the puppy on the grass, the little dog was very happy. Maggie ran down the long backyard, circled around a pink and white gazebo, then ran back the other way and circled around the stone fire pit. She had her own racetrack and she loved it. She ran and ran until she collapsed, panting at Marci's feet. After a rest and a drink of cool, fresh water, Marci took the puppy inside to meet the cats. Now remember, Maggie had never met a cat face to face. She had only seen them streaking by when her brothers and sisters had chased them over the fence. Maggie's eyes opened wide with excitement when she saw a large orange cat sleeping in a patch of sunlight on the floor. She trotted over for a curious sniff. The cat's name was Pumpkin. He didn't run away because he knew that Maggie was just a puppy. Their wet noses rubbed together in greeting. The cat yawned, curled up, and went back to sleep. Just then, a shiny black cat named Dodo came out to see what was going on. The cat's yellow eyes narrowed when he saw the dog. Dodo was Pumpkin's brother, but they were very different as siblings sometimes are. Pumpkin was orange and Dodo was black. Dodo liked avocado, which is not good for cats, and Pumpkin preferred tuna. Most of all, Pumpkin liked dogs and Dodo did not, even if they were just puppies. Maggie didn't know this as she trotted up to the black cat, ready to make another new friend. That's when Maggie learned about claws. Quick as lightning, Dodo's paw shot out and scratched the puppy's tender nose. Poor little Maggie squealed and ran behind Marci to hide. Marci picked the frightened puppy up to comfort her as the black cat stalked off with his tail proudly held high. Maggie was not really hurt. She was just so surprised that Dodo didn't want to make friends. Every day, Maggie would try again to make friends with Dodo, but she was always very careful to keep her nose out of reach of those sharp claws. It took a long time before Dodo stopped hissing at Maggie. Eventually, Dodo accepted Maggie, and then they would eat right next to each other. A few months after coming to live with Marci and the cats, Maggie was taken to the veterinarian for an operation called spaying. It meant that Maggie would never have any puppies of her own. Marci was a little sad about that, but she knew that it would help keep Maggie healthy. Maggie healed quickly and soon returned to her upstairs window seat where she liked to watch the comings and goings in the neighborhood all day long. She was a good watchdog and always barked loudly when a strange cat, car, or person came into view. She barked especially loud if someone came into the yard. Pumpkin and Dodo would always run and hide when Maggie barked like that. Maggie was very good at her job. Marci had an important job too besides caring for Maggie, Dodo, and Pumpkin. She took care of feral cats that lived on the streets and under bushes. They were often very hungry and sick and needed help. Sometimes Marci caught little kittens and found them loving homes. One summer evening, Marci was trying to catch a small kitten that had been all alone for a whole day and night. His mother, brothers, and sisters had been rescued and were all playing together in a foster home. Marci wanted to catch this kitten so she could reunite the family. The teeny kitten peeked down at her from the dusty rafters of an old dark shed. It was a sweet little gray and white face that could be clearly seen through the dim light and cobwebs, even though he was trying to hide as his mother had taught him to do whenever she left her kittens alone. Marci knew the kitten had to be hungry. She put some tasty cat food into a trap and meowed softly. She tiptoed quietly out of the building and stood by a dirty window, watching and waiting silently. It took a long time before the terrified kitten decided his growling tummy was more important than staying hidden. He was, after all, very hungry. He climbed down carefully, following his nose toward the delicious smell. When the kitten went into the trap to eat, the door suddenly closed behind him. He was very scared and hissed at Marci as she approached, but he was caught. To calm him, Marci covered the trap with a sheet before carrying it to her car. It was too late to take the kitten to join his family, so Marci took him home with her for the night. She parked her car in the garage and closed the big door. It was dark and quiet and safe for the frightened kitten caught in a cage. Growing kittens need to eat often, and Marci knew this. She brought food, water, and a small litter box to put into the cage, but the kitten spit and slashed with his claws as she came close. Marci spilled the water all over her clothes as she jumped back in surprise. Calming herself, she approached the cage again very carefully and managed to slip the litter box and dishes inside without letting the kitten escape. All the while, the kitten hissed and spit and slashed with his claws. He was very fierce because he was very scared. Marci would be very glad to take this kitten to join his brothers and sisters. In the morning, Marci went to check on him and take the little one some breakfast. She carefully lifted the sheet that covered the trap and peeked in. The kitten was backed into the corner of his cage, trembling and meowing. But when he saw Marci, he rushed, spitting and slashing with his sharp claws just as he had done the night before. Marci was heartbroken to see how terrified the kitten was. She wanted to pick him up and cuddle him, but she was afraid to get near the cage. Perhaps if he saw I like cats, she thought, and went inside to get her black kitty. The kitten's mother was black, so Marci hoped that seeing Dodo in her arms would calm the kitten down. She held Dodo up a safe distance away from the cage. Dodo hissed and struggled to get down. Then Marci tried it again with Pumpkin. Neither Pumpkin nor Dodo wanted anything to do with the kitten. The poor little kitten continued to shake and cry and hiss and spit. Then Marci thought of Maggie. She was black too and liked cats. When Marci picked Maggie up to see the kitten, a miraculous thing happened. The kitten stopped shaking and he started purring very loudly. He slowly came forward towards Maggie. Then he reached out to the dog through the cage with his tiny paw still purring loudly. Marci brought Maggie a bit closer. The kitten purred. The kitten and dog touched noses. The kitten purred. Maggie sniffed the kitten. The kitten purred. Still afraid of those sharp claws, Marci slowly reached out a finger and stroked the soft fur through the cage bars. The kitten purred. Obviously, it was love at first sight between Maggie and the kitten. Maggie wiggled excitedly in Marci's arms. Marci carefully opened the cage and lifted the kitten out. She gently placed him on her lap and watched in amazement as Maggie nuzzled his tiny face and licked him. The kitten just purred and purred, rubbing against Maggie. Marci took the pair into the house and put them together in a room without Pumpkin or Dodo. The kitten never left the dog's side, and Maggie couldn't have been happier as she sniffed and licked her new baby. The only time she moved away was when the kitten would try to nurse because, you see, Maggie didn't have any milk to give him. By now, Marci realized a special bond had formed between Maggie and the kitten. Although she hadn't planned on adopting another cat, she knew that this kitten would be joining the family. Now he needed a name. Since Marci caught the kitten in a small barn-like shed, she decided to name the kitten Barney. Barney spent all his time with Maggie. They chased each other up and down the hallways upstairs. Afterwards, they napped together on the window seat overlooking the neighborhood. When Marci took Maggie out for their daily walk, Barney would watch from the window until Mommy Maggie returned. Little Barney wouldn't even eat unless Maggie was there beside him. Maggie loved cat food, even though it was too rich for her, and would lick Barney's face after every meal. Cats like to play at night, so they need to be taught when to sleep if they're going to live in a house with people. At bedtime, Marci put Barney into a bathroom by himself. She did this to keep him safe, and so he would learn to sleep when she did. One night, Marci went to bed and didn't lock Barney into his room. She was just falling asleep when loud purring woke her up. It wasn't coming from Pumpkin, who was at her feet. It wasn't coming from Dodo, who was on her pillow. Oddly, the sound was coming from the bed on the floor where Maggie slept. Marci looked over the side of her bed, and there was Barney all snuggled up to his mom. Maggie's big head and Barney's tiny one were side by side, hanging over the edge of the pillow. Marci just smiled, turned over, and went to sleep. She knew Barney was in the good paws of his Mommy Maggie. Marci was very glad that Maggie had a baby after all, even if it was a kitten. The end.
Wasn't that great? We are so happy you could be here with us for Maggie Adopts a Kitten. It really happened. That's all we have today. Join us next time for another fantastic episode of Miss Mac's Bookbag. Goodbye.
We want to thank author Marci Kladnik for letting us read her book in today's episode. If you'd be interested in purchasing her book for yourself, you can find it on Amazon. Also, a special thanks to Mitchell Memorial Branch Library in East Prairie, Missouri, and the Bootheel Youth Museum in Malden, Missouri, for allowing us to film in their facilities.
If you are an independent writer and have a children's book you think would be great for Miss Mac's Bookbag, contact us at the email listed, and we would love to consider your book for a future episode.